Everything's going very well. We've just about finished all of the theoretical work on the Soyuz.
The 1980s was a time of wide-eyed optimism for NASA and space exploration. Just 11 years earlier, humans had landed on the moon in 1969, fueling bold and bright visions of the future. However, the Challenger disaster on January 28, 1986, brought a devastating blow. The explosion not only marked a tragic moment for the friends and loved ones of the 7 astronauts aboard the doomed shuttle, but also for the entire nation. Let's take a look at how and where the Challenger's crew members were laid to rest. Before we delve into that, let's look back at the early warning signs to understand what really happened and what caused the disaster. Early warning signs appeared just 73 seconds into its final flight. The Challenger's rockets fired with unrelenting force, their white boosters screaming as fire shot from their tails. Mission Control heard the steady voices of the crew, all unaware of the impending doom just a heartbeat away. Suddenly, flames licked along the right booster, fueled by a failing seal. The connection between the booster and the orange fuel tank exploded in a terrifying split second, causing the booster to slam into the tank and ignite the fuel in a monstrous fireball. Just a few years earlier, on April 4, 1983, excitement crackled in the air as Mission Control counted down to liftoff for the Challenger space shuttle's historic first mission. All systems go. The voice boomed over the intercom, and with a fiery roar, the boosters ignited. The colossal 184-foot machine lurched skyward, a testament to human ingenuity. This triumphant launch began a successful year for Challenger, which completed 6 more missions in 1983. However, with each fiery ascent and scorching re-entry back to Earth, the relentless toll on the spacecraft became increasingly evident. Behind the scenes, constant repairs became necessary, with parts needing to be swapped out due to the punishing demands of space travel. Little did anyone know these unseen cracks would one day lead to a tragedy far beyond repair. A machine that had been a source of national pride was on the verge of a catastrophic failure that would claim the lives of some of the country's best astronauts. But would you be surprised to learn that the machine showed signs of the looming threat? Or was it because the crew were non-professionals? There are many theories about the cause of the Challenger crash. Some blamed poor maintenance, while others pointed to the crew's lack of skills. How true are these opinions? NASA engineers who maintained the Challenger spacecraft had voiced their concerns about its condition. They warned NASA that the relentless push of missions could have disastrous consequences, as the superstructure of the craft was not built to last forever and showed increasing signs of weakness. Their warnings, however, went unheeded. These early warning signs and ignored concerns ultimately led to the Challenger disaster, marking a tragic chapter in the history of space exploration. Preparing the crew. On July 19, 1985, just 6 months before the disaster, school teacher Krista McAuliffe received a life-changing letter. "We are thrilled to inform you that you will be the first teacher in space." McAuliffe, chosen from over 11,000 applicants, could hardly believe her eyes. This dream come true would allow her to share the wonders of space with students nationwide upon her return. Little did anyone know that this historic mission would be overshadowed by an impending tragedy. The news spread like wildfire at Concord High School in New Hampshire. McAuliffe's colleagues were ecstatic, and the excitement quickly reached her family, friends, and students. This wasn't just her dream, it became a symbol of inspiration for the entire nation. As part of the Teacher in Space project, McAuliffe planned to conduct live lessons from space, capturing students' imaginations across America. Following her return, she would embark on a nationwide lecture series, establishing her role as a champion of science and technology education. McAuliffe and the other expedition members reported to Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas, where they began a rigorous training program under the leadership of Commander Francis R. Scobie. They trained in simulators, learning to handle the spacecraft's systems, practicing emergency procedures, and preparing for the physical demands of space travel. The crew also participated in team-building exercises to ensure seamless cooperation under the high-pressure conditions of space. The training was intense and thorough. The crew spent hours in simulators, rehearsing every aspect of the mission from liftoff to landing. They underwent physical training to prepare their bodies for the effects of microgravity and participated in survival training in case of an emergency landing. McAuliffe, in addition to her astronaut training, prepared her lesson plans and familiarized herself with the equipment she would use to conduct her lessons from space. McAuliffe's inclusion in the mission was a testament to NASA's commitment to education and public engagement. Her role was to inspire a new generation of students to pursue careers in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. The lessons she planned to teach from space would be broadcast to classrooms across the country, making the wonders of space exploration accessible to young minds everywhere. The anticipation and excitement surrounding the mission were palpable. Schools across the country planned to tune in to McAuliffe's lessons, and she received letters of support and encouragement from students and teachers nationwide. Her journey was seen as a way to bring the realities of space travel into the classroom, making it real and tangible for students. But if you think the crew's lack of skills caused the craft's crash, this will shock you. The Challenger crew was among the best trained and most prepared astronauts NASA had ever assembled. Their skills and professionalism were never in question. The Challenger mission was led by Commander Francis R. Scobie, a seasoned pilot who had previously journeyed into space on STS-41C. This wasn't his first high-stakes mission. Alongside him was Michael J. Smith, an experienced aviator with 4,167 flight hours under his belt, having mastered 28 different types of aircraft, both civilian and military. Judith A. Resnick, one of NASA's pioneering female astronauts, served as a mission specialist. Her expertise in developing crucial software and procedures was invaluable to NASA's operations. Resnick had already flown on Discovery's maiden voyage, STS-41D, showcasing her exceptional skills. The mission specialist team also featured two accomplished astronauts. Ronald E. McNair, who made history as the second African-American in space during STS-41B, brought his wealth of experience to the mission. Ellison S. Onizuka, a trailblazer as the first Asian American and the first person of Japanese descent to travel in space during Discovery's STS-51C mission, added further expertise. Joining the crew as a payload specialist was Gregory B. Jarvis, tasked with conducting experiments for Hughes aircraft. This mission marked Jarvis's long-awaited debut in space. Despite being bumped from previous flights to accommodate U.S. dignitaries, his relentless determination had finally paid off. Tragically, his dreams, like those of his fellow crewmates, would remain unfulfilled. If you've ever questioned the competence of this crew, think again. Now that we've met the crew, let's delve into some disturbing signs that the mission may have been doomed from the start. Unheeded warnings. The Challenger spacecraft provided engineers with early indications of an impending disaster. Let's delve into some of the reports that were disregarded regarding the craft. After months of rigorous training, both the crew and the nation were eagerly anticipating the launch date. However, disappointment struck 6 days before liftoff, on January 22, 1986, when a high-ranking NASA official entered the training room. "It's not the news you wanted," he apologized. "But we'll have to delay your mission until another shuttle, 61C, returns. They face setbacks, and their landing isn't expected until tomorrow." Disappointment permeated the room. Every space mission held special significance, a dream realized even for seasoned astronauts. The allure of the unknown, the beckoning call of the stars, held immense power for them all. To the crew, this seemingly minor delay felt like an eternity, as they were eager to make history. Finally, on T-1 day, the Challenger crew anxiously awaited dawn and their historic mission from their quarters. But if you think they were about to embark on their journey into space, prepare for a major shock. Here's what unfolded. Another unexpected delay occurred. As engineers meticulously inspected the spacecraft, a sense of unease began to settle in. One engineer, his voice tinged with concern, approached his superior. "Sir, I'm deeply concerned about the integrity of the rocket seals in these cold temperatures." This lingering worry had been brushed off earlier, but continued to cast a shadow over the mission, hinting at the impending darkness that would engulf it. In truth, this wasn't the first time concerns had been raised about the spacecraft. A sense of unease had permeated the shuttle program for over 2 years, as engineers and technicians expressed fears about pushing the spacecraft beyond its limits. While the shuttles were feats of engineering marvel, even the most resilient machines have their breaking points. Despite these concerns reaching the ears of a NASA official, they were only briefly acknowledged. The launch proceeded as scheduled, with anxieties being disregarded. As dawn painted the Atlantic in shades of orange on January 28, 1986, a mere 2 hours and 38 minutes remained before disaster struck. And if you think that's the end of the troubles, brace yourself for what's to come. The final countdown. As the launch hour drew near, crowds gathered around Cape Canaveral in anticipation. Journalists from all corners of the globe mingled with locals and eager visitors who had traveled far for this momentous occasion. This wasn't just any ordinary launch, it was history unfolding before their eyes. The inclusion of teacher Krista McAuliffe on the Challenger crew had piqued immense interest in this mission. This launch marked the 25th Space Shuttle mission, with Challenger itself, being a seasoned veteran, embarking on its 10th journey. Its impeccable track record instilled a sense of confidence among spectators, a testament to human ingenuity pushing the boundaries of what was thought possible. As the astronauts suited up in their spacesuits, cheers erupted from the crowd below. Stepping out of their transport vehicle, they waved to the assembled throngs, their movements purposeful and determined. An elevator stood ready to transport them to the cockpit of the Challenger. Meanwhile, back in Houston, Mission Control buzzed with activity. Hundreds of sensors on the spacecraft relayed a constant stream of data, meticulously monitored and double-checked to ensure that the Challenger was indeed ready for liftoff. The astronauts settled into their seats, securing their straps as the hatch sealed shut with a hiss, signaling the imminent journey into space. Scobie and Smith meticulously conducted their final checks, the atmosphere thick with a blend of nervous anticipation and exhilaration. They stood on the brink of realizing a dream, with the eyes of the world fixed upon them in wonder. However, another unexpected delay intervened. The Challenger carried crucial scientific cargo, including the tracking and data relay satellite, affectionately known as TDRS-B, designed to relay vital information. Additionally, the Spartan Halley spacecraft was intended for release. Sadly, none of these experiments would see the light of day. The space liftoff was postponed due to unfavorable weather conditions. The launch. After a while, the skies cleared, the wind calmed, and everything fell into place once more. Commander Scobie and Pilot Smith completed their final checks, activating a symphony of instruments and sensors. The voice of Mission Control reverberated through the cockpit, counting down the seconds with rhythmic precision. 10, 9, 8. Anticipation turned into intense focus. 7, 6, main engine start. A surge of power pulsed through the Challenger. 4, 3, 2, 1, liftoff. The Earth trembled as the solid rocket boosters ignited, producing a deafening roar that reverberated for miles. "All right!" exclaimed astronaut Judy Resnick over the intercom, met with a chorus of cheers from the onlookers. 8 explosive bolts released, freeing the Challenger from its earthly bonds. Like a majestic bird breaking free from its cage, it soared into the unknown, leaving a trail of fire and smoke in its wake as it ascended into the sky. Surviving a crash from space is virtually impossible. Yet, the Challenger's crash was just the beginning of the challenges faced by those tasked with recovering the crew's bodies. How did it happen, and how did they locate the crew? By 10:04, all instruments indicated a successful liftoff as the main engines roared to life. However, behind the scenes, a troubling silence emerged. A data blackout at 10:25 initially seemed minor, blamed on interference from launch structures. But it hinted at deeper issues. Moments after liftoff, abnormal black smoke was spotted by ground-based telescopes. Yet it wasn't immediately seen as cause for alarm. This ominous sign emerged from the right solid rocket booster near a critical O-ring seal. Despite the smoke, neither the crew nor mission control sensed anything awry. The Challenger continued its ascent seemingly unaffected. Unbeknownst to them, the black smoke signaled a serious problem. Investigators later determined it stemmed from hot gases leaking from a faulty O-ring seal. These seals, designed to withstand extreme heat, were compromised by the cold temperatures on launch day. The smoke thickened, but neither crew nor mission control sensed danger. The Challenger pressed on, seemingly unfazed, executing routine procedures without a hitch. Launch commentator Hugh Harris's announcement at 9:47, signaling the shuttle's clearance from the tower, fueled a sense of false optimism. The troubling smoke briefly dissipated, adding to the illusion of smooth progress. However, at 10:44, technicians noticed a concerning anomaly, a slightly elevated internal pressure reading in the right-hand booster. This subtle hint of trouble contrasted with the celebratory atmosphere. Unaware of the escalating danger, the crew continued their duties. Pilot Smith executed a roll maneuver at 11:08 to align the Challenger for its mission. Tragically, they were hurtling toward disaster, completely unaware of the impending catastrophe looming before them. The nightmare. At 11:27 a.m., just 19 seconds after liftoff, the dream swiftly turned into a nightmare. The Challenger shook violently, veering off course with alarming force. With remarkable composure and aided by the navigation system, pilot Michael Smith fought to regain control, briefly steadying the spacecraft. There was a fleeting glimmer of hope. By 11:43, as the crew followed protocol and adjusted the main engine throttle, the situation appeared to stabilize. The Challenger resumed its trajectory, hurtling towards its intended destination. However, this respite was short-lived. At 12:01, with the shuttle approaching the sound barrier at 10,000 feet, Commander Scobie delivered a chilling observation. His visibility was compromised. Unbeknownst to them, this warning heralded the impending catastrophe just moments away. Despite the ominous signs, the Challenger pressed onward, adjusting its engines as it entered a region of intense atmospheric pressure, a routine part of the ascent. At 12:19, all systems indicated normal functioning. Yet beneath this facade of normalcy, ominous plumes of black smoke continued to billow. Then, at 12:53, a flash of light erupted near the right wing, sending shivers down the spines of those watching intently. It was the first spark heralding the impending inferno. Moments later, a massive orange fireball erupted from beneath the right wing, a result of the failing booster. What's even more astonishing is that instrument readings inexplicably remained normal despite the escalating catastrophe, masking the true extent of the unfolding disaster. The Challenger, unbeknownst to its crew, was hurtling towards oblivion while its internal gauges indicated stability, lulling the crew into a false sense of security. At 13:28, just shy of a minute after liftoff, the Challenger reached a staggering speed of over 1,500 miles per hour. Commander Scobie calmly initiated a throttle down, a routine procedure as the spacecraft ascended. The clock ticked on relentlessly. At 1446, as the Challenger traversed through the peak air pressure zone, a critical O-ring seal in the booster suffered a catastrophic failure. This moment marked the tipping point, triggering a terrifying chain reaction. Flames, unleashed by the ruptured seal, engulfed the shuttle's right side. It's likely that at this juncture, 73 seconds into their ill-fated mission, the crew became acutely aware of the dire reality of their situation. Their aspiration of reaching space had swiftly transformed into a harrowing struggle for survival, a battle they, tragically, were destined to lose. Next, let's highlight the incredible courage displayed by the crew at this pivotal moment. In a desperate attempt to regain control, the crew initiated emergency procedures and tried to throttle up the failing engines. However, the Challenger was doomed, hurtling towards a fate it couldn't evade. At the 74-second mark, a grim realization likely swept over the crew. They were no longer on a mission of exploration. They were hurtling toward imminent destruction. The Challenger, weakened by the booster breach, tore apart in an explosion. Miraculously, the crew cabin remained intact for a fleeting moment. Yet the loss of atmospheric pressure quickly rendered them unconscious. Months later, search teams would recover the wreckage, serving as a heartbreaking confirmation of the crew's tragic demise. The Challenger disaster laid bare the fragility of human life when confronted with immense power and the relentless pursuit of scientific progress. The sacrifice of the Challenger crew spurred the implementation of enhanced safety protocols, ensuring that future space missions would be undertaken with a renewed emphasis on caution and a profound respect for the risks involved. What transpired with the crew's remains may surprise you. Eternal remembrance. The force of the Challenger spacecraft's impact on the ocean was beyond comprehension. The crew compartment bore the brunt of this violent collision, with the pressure and speed obliterating it, leaving little hope of finding the crew intact. From the outset, search crews braced themselves for the heartbreak and difficulty of their task. Over the course of 3 months, a painstaking search and recovery operation unfolded. Specialized ships, advanced sonar technology, and highly trained divers were mobilized to scour the vast ocean floor, hunting for any remnants of the scattered debris. While locating the crew compartment was a critical initial achievement, the slow process of finding remains painted a bleak picture. The recovered material, fragmented and crushed, stood as a silent testament to the sheer force of the impact. Once a substantial amount of debris was retrieved, a solemn duty awaited the pathologists at the Armed Forces Institute of Pathology: the identification of the remains. Sadly, the devastation wrought by the explosion posed significant challenges to this task. Traditional methods of identification, such as fingerprints or dental records, proved futile due to the fragmented nature of the recovered material. Despite these obstacles, scientists persisted in their efforts. Through meticulous analysis, they eventually managed to identify remains belonging to all 7 crew members. However, the extent of the damage rendered it impossible to determine the exact cause of death for any of them. After the identification process, a poignant decision was made to cremate the remains of all 7 astronauts. This is where the story takes an even more emotional turn. To ensure a dignified and respectful final resting place, the cremated remains of the astronauts were combined and laid to rest at Arlington National Cemetery in Virginia. A single grave marker was erected as a permanent memorial, symbolizing their collective sacrifice and ensuring they are forever honored as a unified crew. During this profoundly difficult time, the privacy of the families of the deceased astronauts was of utmost importance. Details regarding the condition of the remains remained private, with officials focusing solely on paying tribute to the crew and their unwavering dedication. The Challenger disaster left an enduring impact on the nation. The memorial at Arlington National Cemetery bears the names of all 7 astronauts, serving as a solemn reminder that their bravery will never fade from memory. Their shared resting place ensures that the Challenger crew will forever be remembered as a cohesive team, their spirits forever intertwined with the stars they once aspired to explore. Though the crew of the Challenger may be gone, their legacy remains vivid in the annals of space exploration. However, there was another theory that suggested the crew of the Challenger may have been alive during the entire fall, and NASA may have tried to hide this. Let's take a look at what this theory proposed. The tragic incident that destroyed the infamous Challenger space shuttle on the morning of January 28, 1986, had a lasting impact on NASA's space programs. However, the full extent of the event was far more shocking than initially believed. In the months following the disaster, Dennis E. Powell of the Miami Herald's Sunday magazine, Tropic, uncovered that NASA had concealed much of the truth. Rather than out of consideration for the families of the crew, NASA's actions were driven by a callous PR strategy to protect their public image. The disturbing revelation that NASA sought to suppress was that the crew of 6 astronauts and 1 schoolteacher aboard the Challenger had actually survived the explosion, only to meet their demise after plummeting 12 miles into the ocean. Apparently ashamed of their failure to adequately prepare the crew for a potentially survivable disaster, NASA withheld crucial information and coerced individuals to deceive the public, who had witnessed the explosion live on television. The cabin of the Challenger managed to escape the explosion relatively intact. Just 73 seconds after liftoff, the Space Shuttle Challenger was suddenly consumed by flames, shocking spectators on the ground. As the broadcast abruptly cut off, confusion gripped the audience, who struggled to comprehend the unfolding tragedy. Unbeknownst to them, a malfunction in one of the ship's rocket boosters had triggered the catastrophic explosion. Inside the shuttle, pilot Mike Smith witnessed a sheet of flame sweep past his window, realizing in that harrowing moment that disaster had struck. His final utterance, a solemn "uh-oh," captured by the in-flight recorder, echoed the crew's grim realization. Despite the inferno engulfing the shuttle, astonishingly, the cabin managed to ascend 3 miles before losing momentum and hurtling downward into the ocean, 12 miles below. In the midst of the chaos and devastation, it's difficult to fathom the possibility of survival. But against all odds, the crew did survive the initial explosion. Photographs captured the shuttle's miraculous escape from the blaze, albeit with visible damage. Despite losing both of its wings, the cabin of the shuttle remained largely intact. Although severely damaged on the outside with the loss of its wings, it astonishingly managed to ascend nearly 3 miles into the sky before plummeting down into the ocean, 12 miles below. Upon recovering what remained of the shuttle, NASA scientists made a remarkable discovery. The cabin had survived the blast, indicating that those aboard had also survived. Their descent lasted 2.5 minutes, during which time the crew remained alive. As the Challenger slowly arched its way downward toward the ocean in a controlled descent, it took 2 minutes and 45 seconds for them to reach the surface below. Remarkably, the cabin fell at a steady pace without spiraling out of control, suggesting that the ship maintained pressure and the astronauts were likely conscious throughout the descent. In fact, it was revealed that the astronauts had even activated their reserve oxygen packs in a desperate attempt to survive. The highly trained crew of the Challenger mission might have had a chance at survival if they had been equipped properly. NASA's attempt to cover up the crew's initial survival has been attributed to embarrassment over their lack of preparedness. As Tom Skaka of Gawker pointed out, NASA had failed to take any precautions for the event of an accident. This lack of preparation was in line with the overconfidence and wishful thinking that led NASA to include a civilian social studies teacher on a risky space mission, broadcast live to classrooms across the nation. There were no tools to halt the craft's descent or allow the astronauts to abandon it, not even an emergency locator beacon. The crew had no choice but to ride it out. The notion that better planning could have prevented such a tragedy adds to its weight. NASA maintains that the cause of death of the Challenger astronauts cannot be definitively determined. Despite compelling evidence suggesting the crew's survival after the initial explosion, NASA stands by its official report. NASA pressured members of the recovery team to withhold information during the early stages of the investigation. When one Coast Guard member discovered significant debris, including an astronaut's helmet with identifiable features, NASA urged him not to disclose these findings in an upcoming television interview, citing the need to inform the families first. "I didn't want them to hear about it on television, so I lied on television. I still feel bad about that," recalled Coast Guard Lieutenant Commander James Simpson. The truth eventually came to light nearly 2 years later, thanks to the investigative efforts of Dennis E. Powell, a reporter for the Miami Herald's Tropic magazine. Powell uncovered crucial evidence about the Challenger disaster. However, NASA attempted to suppress this information, as Powell's investigation was conspicuously absent from the Miami Herald's anniversary coverage, with no online version available. Contrary to popular belief, only a relatively small number of people actually witnessed the Challenger disaster live on television. While it's commonly assumed that millions watched the tragedy unfold in real time, the reality is quite different. Most viewers watched recorded replays of the event rather than witnessing it as it happened. When the shuttle broke apart, all major networks cut away from the broadcast. Additionally, the disaster occurred on a Tuesday morning at 11:39 a.m. Eastern Time, a time when many people were either at school or work. Although CNN aired the launch in its entirety, cable news was still in its early stages, and satellite dishes were not yet widely accessible. However, NASA had arranged for a satellite broadcast to be transmitted to TV sets in numerous schools due to Krista McAuliffe's involvement in the mission. For many school children who watched, the Challenger disaster remains a memorable and significant moment from their childhoods. There were speculations that NASA was under pressure to launch the Challenger shuttle in time for President Ronald Reagan's State of the Union address. NASA officials reportedly felt compelled to proceed with the Challenger mission after facing multiple delays, partly due to challenges in bringing the previous shuttle, Columbia, back to Earth. However, claims suggesting that pressure came from the Reagan White House to somehow link the shuttle or its astronauts directly with the State of the Union appear to have been politically driven and lacked direct evidence. Following the tragedy, Reagan postponed his annual address to the nation, marking the first and only time in history a president has done so, and instead addressed the nation about the Challenger disaster. His speech, widely considered one of the most memorable of his presidency, included a poignant quote from the poem High Flight by American pilot John McGee, Jr., who died while flying for the Royal Canadian Air Force in World War II. Reagan honored the Challenger astronauts, stating, "We will never forget them, nor the last time we saw them this morning, as they prepared for their journey and waved goodbye and slipped the surly bonds of Earth to touch the face of God." Over a decade after the Challenger tragedy, a poignant reminder of the event emerged when 2 sizable fragments from the spacecraft washed ashore at a nearby beach. In the immediate aftermath of the shuttle disaster, extensive salvage operations swiftly recovered hundreds of pounds of metal from the Challenger wreckage. By March 1986, the remains of the astronauts were also found amidst the debris of the crew cabin. While NASA managed to retrieve all significant pieces of the shuttle by the conclusion of its Challenger investigation in 1986, a substantial portion of the spacecraft still rested at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. A decade later, the somber memories of the disaster resurfaced as 2 substantial pieces of the Challenger appeared in the surf at Cocoa Beach, situated 20 miles south of the Kennedy Space Center at Cape Canaveral. NASA identified these barnacle-encrusted fragments, one measuring over 6 feet wide and 13 feet long, as likely originating from the shuttle's left wing flap. Following verification, The newly discovered parts were placed alongside other shuttle remnants, totaling approximately 5,000 pieces and weighing around 250,000 pounds, in two disused missile silos. As we reflect on the tragic events surrounding the Challenger disaster, questions linger about the fate of the crew and the actions taken by NASA in its aftermath. What truly happened to the bodies of the Challenger crew? Was there a possibility that they were alive during the fall, and did NASA attempt to conceal this information? Your thoughts and insights are valuable as we strive to understand this pivotal moment in space exploration history. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content on this topic. Until next time, stay tuned.